Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman, talk today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us here in this edition of Talk Today. Honored to be able to welcome to the studio a chance to give you some financial insight and tips with the General Manager of the Cayman Development Bank, Ms. Tracy Ebanks. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And it's truly is a pleasure to have a chance not only to chat with Ms. Tracy Ebanks as the General Manager of the Cayman Development Bank, but I think to talk finance and economics and to get people comfortable and at least very, very cognizant of the idea that financial counsel and financial advice, talking financially should be almost a common everyday parlance within us. Not only because we live in what's supposed is probably the best financial center in the world, but the fact that understanding our personal finances, what a budget is, not just a terminology, but how do we apply it, how do we develop it, how do we monitor it, it should be everyday, not just commonplace. Right, Ms. Tracy?
Yes, thank you for that introduction, and you're quite right.
At the start, let me ask, there seems to be some reticence, or almost like how some have towards certain subjects, a teacher as well as student as well as parent, when it comes to finances or personal finance. We may know what a paycheck is. We may know, you should save, but some of us seem to be unable or simply unwilling, but I believe it's unable to say, okay, how do we make sure that we make this thing go where it should go, and where should it go, and what should be a priority? Is that part of the challenge that we're facing? We're unaware, but perhaps ill-advised?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. One of the problems that I see is that it starts from student age. More education needs to go into the system. That is, kids should be learning at an early age the importance of good savings habits. Mm-hmm. Sometimes during the summer they'll get a summer job, and instead of taking that money and blowing it on a new game or a new cell phone or something, they need to start learning the importance of savings and having a goal, an end goal for that, particularly the high school students. If they want to go to college, if they want to go to university, there are government scholarship programs, and the CIDB does finance the spillover that the scholarships don't cover. But not every child is going to qualify for a scholarship, so they'll need to think on other revenue measures. So it's important that they look at their summer jobs and use that money wisely, have a goal in mind, and I think this is missing out with a lot of the students.
Yeah. Let's talk about that as you shared the education and particularly developing good savings habits, perhaps for our students in their summer jobs, whether high school or they're in university, but even us as young working adults, even us as parents with mortgages and school fees and all the other things. How do we do that? Because with the greatest respect, there are many who would say, listen, I sit down every month and every week, whatever the paycheck is, and say, well, light bill, food, gas, water, this, and this. I got more month than I have money. We hear that from many people who genuinely are trying to, live within their means, but they seem to have, been unable to thus far. Take us to that point where we develop that. How do we get to that point?
Well, I hear where you're coming from, because a lot of people are unable to save even to purchase a home. They're living paycheck to paycheck. It can be extremely difficult. And again, I think it starts from an early age that if you develop good savings habits, and also the importance of establishing good credit history with the banks. Even if it's a small loan, once you get a loan and you're repaying it on time, then you've started to establish a very good credit history with the institution, and that will enable you to borrow in the future.
Mm-hmm. Credit history and credit scores, the Cayman context. We seem to be familiar that other jurisdictions, perhaps let's use the U.S. in particular, we see the commercials on television, we may have, your credit rating is this, and I'm not going to profess I understand what it is and know what number is good. But in the Cayman context, a credit rating like how they have in, say, the U.S., do we have anything like that here in our scene context?
We don't have a credit rating system like the United States or Canada would have. It's something that I think they should look at down the road. Right now, the banks, the main banks, just send out names and addresses and birth dates and try to get the credit history of their customer before they entertain a loan. Credit scoring system would be beneficial here, I think. But that's the way it works in Cayman right now. I think it needs improvement.
We know for those of us who had loans, whether they're for mortgage or some other loan, the bank says we do a credit check. And that means, I gather, that they'll call, or some format in some system, the other banks to say, and the credit union, I presume, hey, Johnny Banks is looking for a loan with us. We want to know, what is like. Does he have anything? He says he has something with you. And then they'll tell them and they'll factor it.
Yeah.
But a national credit rating system would be different.
Yeah. And it would have a permanent record of that customer, because sometimes loans can be written off or paid off. Just depends how sophisticated the computer equipment is, how much they retain. But the banks here, instead of having a credit rating system, they'll have debt servicing ratios, covenants that the customer has to meet before they're even eligible for a loan. And the standard is typically 50%. They may go as high as 55%. So that means that your car loan, your mortgage, your credit card, any kind of loan can't be more than 55% of your monthly income.
And we know from customers, presumably the banks are now starting to look at the strata fee that you pay every month or quarter, whatever it is, as part of your debt service ratio. So if your complex is $100 a month or $1,000 a month, even though you're paying it, that becomes part of that calculation for your debt service ratio. What is the debt service ratio for those who are not sure?
Yeah, I mean, strata fees would have to be included in your mortgage payment because it's essentially a fixed payment. It is a payment that you have to make every month. So like I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, the ratios that banks look at, it includes strata fees, house insurance premiums, all of that. Any of those kind of fixed costs are going to be calculated towards what they feel you're capable of paying back. And you don't want it to go over 50%. If you're paying more than 50% of your pay towards loans and strata fees and insurance, then, where are your contingencies, especially when your light bill goes up, your water bill goes up, you have very little room left over.
And that, as you share, that debt service ratio is the percentage of your salary that is being taken out for these fixed monthly expenses.
Right.
Your loan payments, your mortgage, your strata, the other things. For credit cards, though, banks seem to also take the limit of your credit card percentage. Is that a standard amount, or is it 5-10%?
Yeah, it's typically 5%. Is what the monthly payment would be.
Okay, so your limit is X dollars. The bank would say, well, minimum payment is this, so 5%. We're going to assume that that's part of it. So that factors in the result then with your insurance for your strata payments, your insurances, your loans, your credit card. That immediately reduces the amount of money that you have available for your loan, your mortgage.
Yes.
Okay. People sometimes, quickly go buy a new car because they can afford it, but it affects them when they're ready to buy property, whether it's a land, home, condo, or the like. when we're looking at credit scores and credit rating and credit histories, and then like, I just had a conversation with someone who said, the utility companies seem to have adopted a process where the payment is due today, and boy, if it isn't paid by close of business today, come tomorrow, they're going to tack on a fee, a percentage, whatever it is. And he says, some days you just don't get there, even online, but you pay every month. Just because, you're good pay, what he puts it, good pay master, but they do not take that into account. And every month he's, a little bit late or what have you. Would this help, in a sense, for credit rating and credit history if we had some sort of thing or would it hinder?
Would it help as far as their credit history if they're paying their CUC bill on time?
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
That wouldn't affect them?
No.
Okay.
No. Any type of utility payment. I mean, you do have to provide a utility payment to confirm your address, your physical address. I've seen them where they have disconnection notice written all over it, but that doesn't stop us from giving a loan, because rightly so, sometimes people can run behind. Doesn't mean they're not going to pay it, because as we know, if you don't pay it, they're going to cut you off.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, with those utilities, sometimes for whatever reason, you just wait for your paycheck. Maybe you just don't have it in hand, but as you shared, it's paid. But by the time you get to pay it, before it's received at the cashier or whatever it is, that system already generates that bill, so it shows outstanding. Even if you were a day after the due date, it still looks at it. All right, when we come back from our break, could we ask about developing good savings habits? Can we also, as you intend to share with us, the idea of talking about small business, how to use their stuff, and equally talk about foreclosures and maybe understanding a little bit more about it? Well, we have the good counsel of Miss Tracy Ebanks, the general manager over at Cayman Development Bank, and so we talk about financial health, giving people a chance to become comfortable with it, appreciating the importance of it. All right, looking forward to that discussion. Stay tuned, please, to Talk Today.
Okay, settle down. There's someone I want to thank. This guy knows how to get the most out of every fill-up. This guy had the common sense to drive into Esso so I could get back on the road. $5,000 richer. Thanks to me. Thank you so much, me. Thank you. Yes.
Spend $25 at any Esso service station and get a chance to win in weekly draws for $5,000 cash. Every week for 5 weeks, we'll be choosing a winner. You can also get a chance to win free fuel and prizes at our weekly Spin and Win events. That's $30,000 in cash and prizes to be won. Drive into an Esso station today. You'll thank yourself. The Esso brand is a trademark of ExxonMobil Corporation and is used under license.
Sometimes things just don't go as planned. That's why you need Contractors All-Risk Insurance from Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Ensure you're covered in the event of property damage and third-party injury or damage claims during your construction projects. And with Fidelity Insurance Brokers, you can be sure you are getting competitive pricing and superior customer service. Call us today for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Babe, not tonight. I need to be rested for all-day meetings tomorrow.
What are you talking about? I was almost asleep.
You keep poking me, and I can't sleep.
That's the mattress spring I keep telling you about. Not me. We really need to get a new mattress.
Tossing and turning, back hurting, can't sleep? It might be time to turn in your old mattress and go to bed with a new one. Browse the huge mattress showroom at Brand Source Home Gallery and pick the perfect mattress today. With mattresses to suit every budget, Brand Source Home Gallery stocks a wide selection of sizes and styles like Pillow Top and Gel Memory Foam. So stop tossing and turning and sleep better tonight with a new mattress from Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park.
Cayman's cruise industry must be preserved and developed. It is a myth that the cruise lines will continue to call on Cayman at the rate they do now without the piers. It is a fact that the mega-class ships will not be tendered. Arrivals will decline by half over time as the older ships are decommissioned. This will hurt our economy and thousands of Caymanians who work in this industry. If we want to continue providing opportunities for Caymanians, we need the piers. Support the piers. Support our tourism.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks for joining us. We get a chance to talk a little bit about, finances and economics and budgets and the need to be informed, but also benefit from the council of good people. And in the studio, the general manager over the Cayman Development Bank, Ms. Tracy Ebanks, shares her intellect and her insight. And I'm hoping that as we have these ongoing discussions, people become at least cognizant and very comfortable with talking, cognizant of the fact that there are people they can go to get guidance. It may be a family member who has particular expertise. Once we get there, like anything else, we'll be able to ask the right questions and understand the answers that are given. Right, Ms. Tracy?
Yep.
All right. Mortgages and foreclosures seem to have been an issue that maybe hasn't been addressed to the extent, and we're not speaking to it. Now, take us on a path so that we understand, maybe how to avoid it, what to do if it happens to us.
Well, I think that a lot of people feel they can't talk to their bankers. That's one of the number one issues. I don't know if it's a pride thing or they feel the bank's not going to help them, but that's not the case. If you're going to be late, the first thing you should do is call the bank and discuss it with them, the reason why you're going to be late, and talk about ways that maybe the bank can do something for you, like waive a payment, if it's something they feel is a one-off thing. If it's going to be a longer event through illness or job loss, again, sit down and talk with them and work out a plan. They should be able to work out a plan with you. What a lot of people don't realize is that the banks are, the oversight is from CIMA, the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, and they have specific regulations they must adhere to. So sometimes it's not as simple as the bank saying, well, we can do this and we can do that, because it falls outside what CIMA tells them they can and cannot do. For instance, once a loan goes 90 days into default, that is, you haven't paid your mortgage for 90 days, it automatically triggers foreclosure by the bank. But on top of that, it also affects how the bank recognizes that loan on their books. So interest will stop accruing on the front end. The bank can no longer recognize that interest into income. It stops that process. And that's an accounting standard. There's no way around that whatsoever. It's not a simple matter as a lot of people would like to think. So that's what makes it more important to go in and talk to your bankers before it heads down that road, because legal expenses can be very expensive. One of the unfortunate things, too, is that a lot of the banks now, their head offices are overseas. So once it goes into foreclosure, it's dealt with another jurisdiction, and customer service can sometimes fall down. Unfortunately, they have to refer to their overseas office even for a decision. It's kind of out of local hands. So another reason why you don't want it to get to that stage, because if they do start the foreclosure process, there's still hope for you. You can still go in and try to negotiate terms. And one of the tools that a bank has is something called a forbearance agreement. It simply means that if you go in and talk to the bank and say, okay, I've been actively looking for a job, I have a job now, I can start making X amount of payments towards my debt, the bank then can actually stop the foreclosure process temporary. You have to sign an agreement to pay a specific amount of money each month, and they won't take it any further. It doesn't come off the market. It doesn't mean that the bank gives up all their rights and remedies. It simply means, okay, this customer is trying to work with us. If they make these payments for, say, 6 months, 8 months, however long the lower payment terms are needed, they won't sell your property. But the minute you miss even one of those arrangements, then the forbearance agreement falls away and legal action will recommence again. So there are some things that can be done, but you need to ask, and you need to ask the right questions.
No, with that, as you shared, in those who are listening, perhaps they may have been on this path, maybe concerned that they're facing this path, or maybe just want to know to make sure that should it happen, because it's not impossible. As you shared, illness, job loss, many things can happen that cause us to fall behind, and it's not intentional. This interest that you referenced when the bank, as you shared, is an accounting standard. The bank now can recognize that interest as income. Does that interest continue to accrue, and then is it compounded in a sense, or how does that work?
Right. The interest will continue to accrue for the customer. But the bank can no longer recognize that interest in the income because the loan is non-performing. So I think a lot of people don't understand that aspect, that a bank just can't simply say, well, we'll take one payment, put your account current again. It doesn't work like that, especially through accounting practices and through SEMA's regulations. We have a lot of customers that sometimes ask us, well, why can't we forgive the interest, or why can't we tack it on to the loan and then restructure them so they're current? But there's accounting implications for that as well.
All right. As we speak to Ms. Tracy, help us now, just maybe repeat some of the things, but a person has a loan, $100,000. That's the balance on the loan. Job loss, something happens and they start to either not make the payments, or the payment is less than the amount. I think what the bank calls a shortfall, right? So they're not making the payment, or it's a payment is less than the agreed payment. Is it 90 days that happens before it goes into foreclosure?
Yes, 90 days.
Okay. Of either consecutive non-payment or a reduced payment?
Consecutive.
Okay, consecutive. So 90 days of non-payment, and then in that time the interest still accrues.
Yep.
Bank says, the person is coming, let's just say the person is coming, bank's aware of the situation, there's no prospect anytime soon, and it looks like it's going to go to foreclosure. At that point, they've gone through a process, because lawyers, courts, all involved. The loan is then X dollars in the book. It was $100,000 at that point. The interest is this. The bank's payout then to clear it off would be the balance plus the interest?
Yes.
So whatever that is, at whatever that rate, that is the amount?
Yes.
Okay. Could it then be that the bank, I believe through the courts, would be able to sell it for less than value if they've been unable to sell it thus far at whatever stated sum? From what you gather.
Yeah.
We're talking mostly about the commercial banks, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, the judge will ask for 2 appraisals, 2 surveyors to go in, and the banks will look at the median of the 2 to arrive at a what they call like a restricted price. The bank is not going to sell it for less than the principal that is owed. It has nothing to do with the interest. If they can sell the property and take some of that interest, they will. But the reserve price is usually the principal.
Okay.
Because the principal is what the banks write off.
We've heard from people just making comments over the years that they've been faced with a scenario where the bank ended up selling the property, and that some realized repaid, but they were still left owing the bank. That is possible as well?
That is possible, because if the interest continues to accrue, so when that property sells, if there's still interest owing on that loan, the bank has 2 choices. They can sue you for the balance, or they can forgive it.
Write it off.
Right. So it just depends on the person's situation and the amount of interest. There's a lot of variables. There's no set answer. If somebody fell on real hardship, or their house burnt down or something like that, the banks will forgive things like that.
But again, as you shared outset, when faced with that scenario, the best thing to do is the first thing to do. Go to the bank and say, hey, listen, just so you know, this is what has happened. Maybe redundancy at work, maybe one of the, let's say it's 2 people, one of the principals to the mortgage have, we're having some challenges. There's only one of us able to pay let the bank be aware of it and then work it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the other things, too, is it does depend on the amount of available equity in the property. So if your house is heavily leveraged, if you have very little equity in the property, that doesn't give you much, or the bank, much wiggle room to even help you. If you can cover at least the interest carrying costs monthly, even if you can't make the principal in these scenarios, that goes a long way, and then the interest isn't building. If you do have equity in the property, that when you get back on your feet, the bank can say, okay, there's some equity here in extreme circumstance. We can take that interest, we can capitalize it.
Add it back to the principal, and
Right.
that's what you mean, right? And equity would be, for those who are not sure, you want to define it to me. You.
Well, yeah. If you have a property that's worth $100,000 and you have a loan against that for $95,000, essentially you really don't have any equity. $5,000 is neither here nor there. If you were to list the property tomorrow, you probably wouldn't get the full value. Just depends on what the market is doing. So the higher you leverage your real estate, the higher that's not a good situation. I know sometimes it's encouraged. I'm not a firm believer of that.
Yeah.
So the less you borrow, the more equity you build, the better chances you have when these kind of situations arise. The bank could say, you know what, maybe there's $10,000 of unpaid interest for whatever reason. The person's working now. We can put that $10,000 onto the principal because there's some equity in the property, so it's less risk to the bank too, and restructure the loan, and hopefully you're on your way again.
Okay. From that perspective, as we get ready to take the next break, this loan-to-value ratio, if it's different from it, what is the sort of the standard now that banks use? And if you have a preference or a recommendation that may be different. But the first one first, what is the loan-to-value normally?
Most banks, I believe, are 90% loan-to-value.
Okay.
I don't think, sometimes they'll go a little higher. Sometimes they'll go as high as 95% if they have a special program on. And really and truly, you don't want to go that high. Because, again, you have very little equity. If something goes wrong with your house, you need to do repairs, you can't even get a home improvement loan. You can't borrow any more on that property.
Now, with that loan-to-value, let's just use the $100,000 value of the property to make it easier for a math, right? And the bank says, we will lend you 90%. So we lend $90,000, you need to find the 10. Some people say, well, I'm paying rent. I can afford the loan payment because it's less than what my rent is. Just use as an example. But they don't have the 10,000. No.
Again, maybe they have something else they can put on the table. Sometimes banks will work with you depending on how much you make, how long you've been on the job. All of these criteria, character goes a long way in how a bank determines your rates, the length of the loan, and any sort of concessions that they'll be prepared to work with you. So if you don't even have the required down payment, maybe there's some other factors that they'll consider.
All right. Mom always says a good name is better than money in the bank, right?
That's right.
That's why you say the character. All right, we're going to pause and take a short break. When we come back, we continue the good conversation with Ms. Tracy Ebanks as we talk about financial health, and hopefully get people thinking and talking and recognizing that maybe Christmas coming up, maybe one of the best gifts that they could give their children is a savings plan. Toys are nice, but boy, money in hand and financial counsel and wisdom could go a long way, right? Stay tuned. We'll talk today.
Residents are being advised of road closure and road works in the vicinity of Breezy Way, Redgate Road, and Airport Road from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday, October 22nd. The roadwork will be entirely on Breezy Way, and the access to Breezy Way from Redgate Road will be closed. Limited access to Breezy Way will be given only from the entry point of Owen Roberts Drive, commonly referred to as Airport Road. From 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Breezy Way Road will be closed, as will the access point from Redgate Road. Residents are being asked to access Breezy Way from Owen Roberts Drive today, Monday, October 22nd. Motorists are asked to proceed with caution and obey all traffic signs.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on insuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore, seaboard.
Welcome to our Esso service station. How can I help you today, ma'am?
$25 in fuel, please.
Sure. I bet I can make you smile, too.
Bet you can't.
Would $5,000 cash make you smile?
Of course. Who wouldn't? But how?
Spend $25 or more in fuel at any of our Esso service stations, and you could be the winner of $5,000 cash. Every week for 5 weeks, one lucky winner will win $5,000 cash. Made you smile, didn't I?
I'm smiling.
Drive into an Esso station today. The Esso brand is a trademark of ExxonMobil Corporation and is used under license.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Cayman Kind is the Cayman experience.
We work at the Cayman Craft Market.
It is a myth that we do not need the cruise ship industry.
It is a fact that when there are no ships in port, we do not earn a living. We depend on the cruise industry, and if it was to reduce by half, many others just like us would suffer immensely. We want to work and provide for our families.
We need the pier.
Support the piers. Support our tourism.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Hope you don't mind me imposing on your behalf of our listeners, but when we have intelligent, eloquent people who can share their knowledge and expertise, we would be well advised to listen and to benefit, right? And unfortunately, I say this with a sense of comfort, recognizing too that it will offend some people. But when we're talking about finances and personal finance, we don't talk about it publicly. We probably don't have the kind of grasp that we should have. But nonetheless, free advice that is good advice. There's money in the bank, right? Ms. Tracy Ebanks shares us. Small businesses in this country, some will run their business on a cash basis, some will have credit, some will finance their own operations from some sort of operating facility at the bank, some will do it from another means, or they'll use it from cash. What are the pros and cons? What are the challenges? What are we talking about when it comes to small businesses?
That's a subject near and dear to my heart. It can be very daunting, very challenging to start a business in Cayman, simply because of the cost of doing business. We're dealing with a small economy, so it depends on what type of business you're going into as well. What I found is a lot of people use their personal cash resources, particularly for startup, because they can't qualify for a loan. It's very difficult to qualify for a small business loan if you do not have a secondary source of repayment. So that simply means if you have a full-time job and you can show that you can pay that small business loan back, your chances of qualifying are greatly improved. But you need to understand when to use cash and when to use credit. Sometimes getting a small business loan isn't a bad thing. A lot of people say we don't want to get into debt right away, but some things you need to finance through credit. And it also, again, establishes credit worthiness with the bank for when you really do need it, especially when your business is increasing in sales. That would, again, drive the need for more credit. So I wouldn't shy away from getting a business loan. Like I said, it improves your chances of increasing lending, to expand, to do all kind of things, and reserve your cash because you can put your cash in another vehicle and earn interest on that as well.
And that's the thing, having the idea you can put your cash in, you have it available to you. Would it then be necessary, not just advisable, but almost necessary for that small business to start to keep a proper set of financial statements, keep the accounts?
Yeah, this is another problem that we see. A lot of people, the mom and pop shops or whatever, they don't keep accurate financial records, so they can't really see where their cost of sales are, where all their money is going, and if they did, then they'd see how to improve that, how to improve the bottom line. Because doing even a simple income and expense report, you can see what your fixed expenses are going to be, whether it's rent, water, utilities, but it also tell you what your cost of sales are as well, you know, how well you're doing there. So even doing a basic income and expense report, which isn't that hard to do, would go a long way.
I mean, simply you know what you're taking in, your income, and you know what your expenses are. End of the day, you'll see whether, or the month or the quarter, the year, whether you made anything.
Right. And then you have a lot of small business owners that mix personal with business. So if you did a monthly financial statement, and at the end of the month you say, okay, I have X amount cash left over, then you can do a draw from that, an owner's draw, or pay yourself a little dividend. Versus doing that in the first instance, and then come month end, you don't have money to pay some of your bills. You really want to separate the two.
And make that amount that you take from the business be a recorded sum reflected as you say, a dividend or draw, so that it's an expense. The business took in this amount of money, we paid all expenses, there's a few dollars left, probably don't take it all, so that you see that the business is sustainable. Quick question from someone listening. Say, what if, I operate on a cash basis and I just, every month, every week, every day, whatever it is, I deposit my cash to my bank. Just, go to the bank every day and do a daily deposit, $15, $50, $1,000, whatever. So at least it's a record of what I collected.
Very, very critical thing to do. So I'm glad that person asked that question, especially for small business owners. If you make $10 and you need to spend $9, it doesn't matter. Get that deposit activity into the bank. Then until you get an income and expense report done, the bank can at least see the money flowing in. You get a lot of people say, well, my sales were this, but how do you prove it? Because they're using the cash day to day instead of putting the money into the bank.
So the bank has a record, at least your account can reflect. Through its system, its reports that, hey, there's this amount of activity in the bank.
Exactly. Even if you can't afford to pay an accountant, that deposit activity is right there, that we can look at the yearly deposit activity, monthly deposit activity against what you're saying your sales are, and it should mirror very closely.
Respectfully, I can see some of you thinking, I make whatever your small business is, maybe it's a little tour operator, maybe it's a little retail store, and let's say you make $1,500 every day, whatever I may say. Oh, the inconvenience of going to the bank and standing in the line, and the expense of the fees, and all the excuses in the world. What do you say to that person? I got to drive and find a place to park. And
well, the banks do have night deposit services.
Okay.
But that's a valid question as well, because I think they charge per item. So, and you don't want to have cash lying around in your premises, but that is the safest way to go. If you can't go daily, use a night deposit wallet.
Now, that's separate and apart from, we see some banks have, presumably near the ATM, somewhere they have a little slip, they have the envelopes, you fill out, put your name, your account number, you put your checks or cash in, and you toss it in, it's almost like a mail drop. That's not the night deposit, right? That's you going into the bank, filling out your form and putting it in, and then they pick it up whenever and do their processing. It's probably just, regular fees. The night deposit when the guys come in or you drop the bags by. That's separate, or is it the same?
No, that's the same thing, essentially.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the people who do that, potentially, probably incurring fees and may not be aware of it?
There could be fees.
Okay. Again, that's the thing.
I think they charge per transaction, unfortunately, but it's safer than leaving it around in your house or your premises.
All right, and I'm glad that you showed up, because I think that's the other thing that some of us need to start to understand. Understand our banking relationship. If it's a mortgage, well, what's the term of the mortgage? What's the rate? What's the repayment amount? What sort of things happen? If we operate in a checking or a savings or some other facility, what are the fees, monthly, daily, per item transaction, and know that those things are going to be part of your expenses.
Mm-hmm. And they can add up, my friend.
No, banks don't charge exorbitant fees. I should be.
But on the same hand that you're making these deposits too, if you have a checking account, again, the bank can see where the money is being spent. So you want to make sure that some of those checks aren't payable to some bar or school fees, or let's keep the things separate.
But we laugh, knowing that some, even with the best of intentions, they will take the business account, because there's money in the business account, to pay the school fees or pay their home's expenses, the light bill, the insurance.
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that, as long as you record it.
Yeah.
And be aware of it, because I think sometimes when they start to do if you do like I said, a simple income and expense statement, and by the end of the month, you got school fees to pay, but you haven't generated the sales that you needed either. You really need to take a hard look at where all the money is going.
I think what you shared earlier is, maintain separate accounts. Don't commingle the funds. Don't mix them up.
Yeah,
and
is the best.
If you take money out, record it as a dividend or a draw so that it's reflected. And if you have money in your, business account and you need to pay some personal expenses, transfer it over.
Yeah.
Spend the extra cents, whatever the bank charges, and take the money out, record it so that you can pay that separately, so it's reflected as a business expense versus a personal expense.
Yes.
Wow. See how I learned things already?
I mean, some would disagree with that, but to each his own.
Right. Well, what I say, good advice, it's important to follow. Looking forward to have you come back on again in the future.
We're out of time already.
You believe that? And these are the conversations that I think, as you shared, start early with savings, talk to our children from our school. Maybe we'll continue having this discussion. And as we go into the Christmas, we start to recognize the importance of budgeting and start a new year, right?
Yeah. It's something that I would like to do, actually go into the schools with a PowerPoint presentation and talk to the kids about this very same subject.
Well, I tell you what, if I can help in any which way, let me know. As we close out our discussion, any quick sort of closing thoughts you may want to leave with our listeners?
Again, I think it goes back to talk to your bankers. And if you're not happy with the answers they're giving you, there's always people in the business community that have solid advice. My staff is trained for financial counseling as well. And we have spoken to people that have loans at other institutions and provided them with some solutions as well.
Well, Ms. Tracy, always a pleasure. I not only like you, wonderful demeanor and that deportment, but that level of enthusiasm and equal competence. So thanks so much. I invite you to have an excellent, productive week.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to you joining us again very, very soon as we talk about, our financial health. We're going to pause and take a break, go to our headline news. When we come back, Mr. Courtney Platt will be our guest. Want to hear what he has to say? Well, there's two ways, You can log on to YouTube and stream us live, or you can just turn on your radio, which is my preference. But hey, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Korab keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's spread the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. Headline. These are the biggest stories right now.
Police are requesting public assistance this morning to locate 16-year-old Rosanna Redden. Police say Rosanna has been in phone contact with responsible parties this weekend, but she has not returned home. Police are attempting to make contact with her to ensure she is safe. Anyone with information about her whereabouts, you're encouraged to call Budden Town Police Station at 947-2220. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, a very active rainy season in Trinidad and Tobago has left hundreds of residents marooned in their districts and homes, with just as many seeking shelter on higher ground from massive flooding ravaging the countryside. According to a statement from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, seasonal rainfalls by an active intertropical convergence zone on a tropical wave has caused heavy and constant rainfall to affect just over 80% of Trinidad and Tobago. Cruise lines will no longer receive incentives for docking ships in the Bahamas. The change in policy was announced last week by the Minister of Tourism for the Bahamas, according to published reports in the Nassau Guardian. The tourism minister said the government was paying some $12 million per year to incentivize cruise line calls to the Bahamas. However, many passengers do not disembark. And one of China's leading stock indexes has seen its highest daily spike in more than 2 years, following signs that the government will step in to support battered equity markets. The Shanghai Composite closed up 4.1%, its biggest one-day rise since March 2016. The moves extend a rally that began on Friday and after investor confidence surged on assurances from Beijing. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advance notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM.
Top a nice boy.
This Wednesday, the season finale for Brianna Bodden is Season of Service. You don't want to miss it.
Party's coming in, I can't wait.
Great food, fun times, and new music.
Plus, we on midterm break, so we can sleep in late after all that fun.
Sleep in late? What happened? You need beauty rest, oh? Speaking of beauty, YCLA finalist Casey Mobler will be on Youth Flex this week.
It sounds like it's going to be a beautiful show.
Along with Melanie Mockfield from Parrot Street office.
Our word of the week is dormitory. D-O-R-M-I-T-O-R-Y. It is a noun that means a large bedroom for a number of people in a school or institution.
In my bedroom, let's take a trip to the moon.
So join us this Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. right here on Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM for the season finale of Season of Service. For Youth Flex, a program for all people, by young people. Youth Flex, more than talk.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're honored now to be able to welcome to our studio Mr. Courtney Platt. We've been talking and discussing, and I'm glad that it's taking place now because I believe to date you've had a few opportunities to make some public presentations.
Yeah.
Those who know you not only know you're incredible, photographic prowess, whether it's for the National Geographic or our own weddings and the like, but you're also very, very much concerned about today's sustainable environment, but also the impact that we're having so that it's here for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it as much as I'd rather be talking about anything else. Really, truly, I really would rather be talking about something else. But, it's I'm a photographer, and I just have this experience set that I think that 99.999% of Caymanians don't have underwater here on our reefs, and specifically around the Georgetown Harbor areas. I'm really keenly aware of how we utilize those resources today. But it comes from a big, long list of experience that goes all the way back to when I was 8 years old, snorkeling in the harbor in Newport Beach, California. And I think it's probably important for listeners to hear a little of my background so that they can understand where I'm coming from and how it is that this photographer could possibly be an expert on this area. But I started snorkeling in the harbor in California when I was 8 and became enthralled with these amazing little life forms that God's put underwater here on our planet. And I wanted to know what they were, how they work. I wanted to know all about them, and this was the beginning of a lifelong passion for marine biology. So I'm 61 now. I've been studying marine biology my whole life, and it was the underwater photography that I started in 1976 to pursue that passion that led me here in 1983. I've been here since 83. I've done well over 5,000 scuba dives here in the Cayman Islands. A whole lot of them in the harbor, in Georgetown Harbor. So I worked at Bob Soto's Diving from 83 to 86, during which time I taught scuba and ran the boats and all that. But I also drove the glass-bottom boat for almost 2 years. And that is probably the most important part of this whole set of experience that gives me an insight into how we utilize these particular sites that lie just outside the dredge pit, which we don't hear anything about from the pro-port side of this argument or from government. They just don't talk about that. They tiptoe around that because, well, I'll get into that a little bit later, I think, but probably need to pause to breathe.
But this is it. And I think it is a discussion that many are having. Some looking at the economics, some are looking at the environmental, some are saying, well, there's a socioeconomic impact. Some are saying, well, I'm not quite sure because George, that I respect, is saying this, but, Mary, that I respect, is saying this, and I don't know. There are a lot of seemingly conflicting, confusing comments, and people genuinely want to know, but they don't seem to be in a position. That's what I'm getting from others. Yeah,
kind of almost ironically, the waters have already been muddied. Okay.
No pun, huh?
Yeah. But eventually, if we do this thing the way they plan, then the waters will literally be muddied. That's a big part of it. But, my particular experience, my particular understanding that I can add to this conversation, that's really important that I can add to this conversation, is specifics about the reefs in and around that dredge pit that will die if we dredge. They will die. I read the EIA, and we've given this presentation to, in a 20-minute nutshell, to, I think, 7 different district meetings with the members of the opposition. And they had some brilliant arguments I had not even really fully understood until I followed these meetings. But in my part of this, though, I'm revealing that portion of this conversation that government and pro-port would rather we not know about. They really have done everything they can to sort of pull the wool over our eyes to hide this issue.
All right. Yeah. Why don't you share with us what are some of those things then that they're hiding? And also ask, have they sort of not just downplayed but avoided or sort of,
tiptoe around?
Well, yeah. The negative consequences. Share with us.
Sure. So, getting right to the point then. Yeah, what it is that I really can add to this conversation. on the south side of the dredge pit, immediately adjacent to the south edge of the pit, and I mean the dredge pit actually cuts into the reef just a little bit on the south side of the pit.
This would be going towards Eden Center? Eden
Rock, to the south. On the south side of the pit, you have Eden Rock, right there at the edge of the dredge pit. On the north side of the dredge pit, we have Soto South, right on the edge of the dredge pit. I mean, immediately along the entire edge of the dredge pit, you have Soto South. And less than 100 meters past that, then we have Soto Central starting. On the inshore side of the dredge pit, we have the wreck of the Cali. Now, I'm only talking about the things outside the pit, because from the very onset, before the first EIA was presented to us in 2015, I was prepared to lose the wreck of the Balboa and its reefs if that was the only thing that was going to happen when they dredge. But the EIA made it absolutely clear, crystal clear, to unmuddy the waters, that in addition to the dredge pit, the silt from dredging could be expected to kill or at least severely damage at least 100 meters either side of the pit. That's best case scenario if all the mitigations work perfectly. And that's not acceptable. And when we look anywhere else in the Caribbean, any other clear water area by coral reefs where they have previously done what we're planning to do, they have lost the reef. And almost every case, the damage was far greater than the best case scenario because things go wrong.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you have the Cali. We also talked about the Balboa at some point. Not to throw us off too, but there was a discussion that we would relocate the reef, or some of the reef.
The Balboa, you mean?
Well, the Balboa as well, but also some of the reef, the actual reefs that are there. I recall some conversations, some written somewhere, that the reefs that are in there, they're going to take them up and move them from point A to point B. I just want to make sure that's not a...
I wish I could show our listeners the pictures of what we're talking about, because that question tells me that you're a little unclear about what's inside the dredge pit, what's outside the dredge pit.
Specifically so.
Yeah. The Cali is not inside the dredge pit.
No.
It's on the inshore side, just outside the dredge pit. But it will surely be lost.
Right.
Absolutely be lost as a tourism attraction. And I'll talk a little bit when we have time about how that serves us as a tourism attraction. It's fantastic. It's immense what it does for us. Same with the Eden Rock area and the Soto's reefs. But in the dredge pit, what we're going to lose immediately from dredging is the wreck of the Balboa, a fantastic section of reef called the Balboa Reef on the inshore side that is 20 feet high, 80 yards long, and 20 yards wide. And if you look at anything that Proport has put out about this project, you will not find the Balboa Reef mentioned. This thing is thousands of years old. It's a big, ancient section of reef, just like the Soto's reefs and the Eden Rock Reef, just like those. This high-profile reef that rises up to within 8 feet of the surface at the high points and drops off precipitously down to 30 feet in the sand on the deeper side, riddled with tunnels. It's an ancient formation that, as the spur and groove coral formations mature, they get bigger and taller and bigger and taller, and they start to close in across the top, and they create tunnels. And it's these tunnels that are a fantastic dive experience and an attraction to us. But this is what fills up with the fry in the summertime. It's also called dwarf herring. These fry come in the millions, and I mean millions upon millions, to pack these reefs in the Georgetown Harbor area to spawn, and that attracts in all the big predatory fish, which makes it an amazing photo opportunity for divers. And this attracts world-class underwater photographers from around the world to come here to photograph that stuff. And it ends up in international underwater film festivals, it's in books, it's in dive magazines. Eden Rock, the wreck of the Balboa, and the Soto's reefs, and the wreck of the Cali are world-famous dive sites. These are a big attraction for our tourism. And these are the things that we will expect to lose. Not just through the direct death of the silt blocking off the sunlight. Here's how it kills. When you dredge, The dredge goes in and it creates a new type of sediment that does not exist in the harbor today. As this huge, heavy bucket crushes its way down through the limestone, it's creating this superfine talcum powder-like material that floats and stays suspended in the water way longer than sand does. Imagine talcum powder. It just stays floating for a long, long time. Very different from what happens in a storm, where a storm stirs up the sand, it stays milky for a couple of days, and it clears up. This stuff persists and holds and hangs and lasts. And I've got graphics I'd love to show you that explain why it is so extremely severe for the wreck of the Cali and Hogstye Bay area, because there's no current flow in those areas. It will just hang and hang and hang in there. But I'm sorry, I have a tendency of running on when I talk about these things, because one thought leads to another. And I just have a little difficulty
we'll get there.
Staying on the string.
Not a problem. Well, we are talking to Courtney Platt, and my good folks over there tell me that because we are also live on YouTube, we can show some of your stuff on the screen. So, Mr. Fox, does that mean now that they got to be listening to us as well as watching the video?
All right.
By going to YouTube, and if you tell your friends, Courtney Platt is in the studio. He has his presentation he shared with us. We're going to zoom in on his screen. You can listen. Is that how it's going to work, Mr. Fox?
Can you see this graphic now?
All right,
okay.
Well, apparently we can see it, yeah.
So this is straight out of the EIA that I'm showing now. And that red area in the middle, that's the dredge pit. That's the red is the living reef area, the wreck of the Balboa, and all that. Again, I would have sat quietly if that was the only thing that was going to happen. But it's the orange area outside that pit that the EIA made very clear back in 2015. This is what caught my hair on fire and started the whole protest thing. And it's not just me. Not just me. There's a whole lot of people who don't want to see Eden Rock, the wreck of the Cali, or Soto's Reef destroyed, and I believe unnecessarily. There are several other options for this thing that could satisfy our need to keep crews coming that don't require killing this area. We don't have to do all this massive dredging. And I'm happy to talk about that at the appropriate time as well.
Indeed. Well, we want to share, because as you've indicated, not just your experience, your expertise, but the willingness to share and maybe help to inform the discussion from all sides. I asked earlier, is the government sort of downplaying the negative consequences? With respect, is the other side, for one of a better reason, pro-port, well, in this case, now, so if they're downplaying, is they sort of overstating the negative impact of it? I mean, the government may be downplaying it, but are those who are asking questions and asking, are they... The reason why I'm asking, some of these people have genuinely said, well, we really don't have sufficient information, but the little we have that is public, the EIA and stuff, we believe it isn't even touching the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other questions. So if one side is accused or alleged to be downplaying, could the other side be saying, well, we're overstating the impact, it's not going to be as bad as you're making it to be, it's not going to be this much...
Actually, they have been stating that we're overplaying this. They have been saying, oh, there's nothing there, it's all dead anyway, don't worry, we can mitigate.
This is the ProPort.
Yeah, ProPort has been saying, sure, those guys, those noisy environmentalist tree huggers, I've actually heard that term, which is kind of silly. I'm a reef hugger, fish hugger, right? But, that somehow we are just... overreacting, and this is not so serious. So let me point out one economic issue here that this does impact. There are hundreds of people employed by these reefs right now, today, and most people are unaware of just how much money we make every year by taking tourists to these sites. This is a major tourism attraction we're talking about. The wreck of the Cali has snuba diving, sea trek, which is the hat thing you wear and walk underwater. They've got snorkeling and scuba diving, but that's the Cali right offshore there. Cruise shippers walk from the dock. They walk over to the Cali and can go have a fantastic experience in clear water with a fantastic reef. Let's see if I can get to the Cali here at some point. Well, I'm getting ahead here on the pictures, but we'll get to that. I'll show you some pictures of this.
Good stuff.
But they can walk to that, and they can walk to Eden Rock, and we're making between $9 and $27 million per year on tourism to these sites.
Just those sites.
And it is not in the PwC report, right? So when you see the cruise ProPort side saying, oh, we're going to make $20 million a year extra if we do this port, right? And we're going to grow the cruise business. Well, what about the $9 to $27 million a year we're going to lose? It's not accounted for in their accounting.
So we'll lose, and it's not accounted for. We'll get a few extra, but end of the day, maybe a negative number.
Possibly because the EIA points out that when you account for all of the different, and I don't even know how they come up with this kind of voodoo economic stuff to me because it's way outside my wheelhouse. But when they account for all the different ways we benefit from the reef system in Georgetown Harbor, they say it's anywhere up to $69 million a year that we earn in various different ways from this reef system. But the direct ticket sales, if we only look at just the direct ticket sales, is about $9 million a year. That's for taking the glass bottom boat tours, the snorkelers out to the Soto's reefs, all these shore dive activities and snorkeling activities and snuba and sea trek, etc. And that crazy amphibious bus tour, which when I first saw that, I laughed. It's like, what are you going to see from that? But they've got underwater video cameras that they have a little monitor inside the bus at each seat, and they're able to see on a monitor what's under the bus as they go along. So they keep that thing packed. I don't know if you watched that operation. I have, and it's amazing. Hundreds of people on an average day go see all these sites every day. And on big days, probably thousands of people when you add it all up between the glass bottom boat tours, the amphibious bus tours, the snorkel tours out to the reef. It's probably thousands of people. And that can grow if we don't kill it. And we don't have to kill it. That's the point.
We're talking to Courtney Platt. If I may ask of you, there are many who shared, well, Georgetown Harbor is a working harbor. We got cruise ships, cargo ships, all those ocean-going vessels in and out, They've said, but you heard what they said. What have they said?
I've heard that. So, the only thing affected by that working harbor is the wreck of the Balboa, which when I first got here in 83 was one of the prime dive sites on the island, period. The night dive on the Balboa was my number one dive site. On my personal top 10 list of dives to do. And my number 2 dive was the day dive on the Balboa. Number 1, number 2. And we dove it at least twice a week at Bob Sutter's Diving. We dove that wreck twice a week during the day, and then we did night dives on the wreck. These days, because of the immense increase in the shipping activity in the harbor, we're limited on how much we can use the Balboa. And so we night dive it and on Sundays, but throughout most of the week, it's kind of off limits because of all the activity. So that part of their argument for that one particular site, which I was willing to give up anyway, right, because of the lack of ability to access it every day as a tourism attraction, although that's just the diving in water part. It does get used every day by the glass bottom boat tours and the amphibious bus tour. So I can tell you, and this is why, here now we're to the point of, if you were listening at the beginning, why my glass bottom boat experience is so important to this conversation. I know for a fact that when it comes to glass bottom boat tours or anything like that, the tour is hit the Balboa, follow the Balboa Reef down to the wreck of the Cali, visit the Cali, and then go follow the Soto South Reef out to Soto Central. So the whole tour, you're showing people something really interesting under the boat, and it's really close to the boat, and it's in clear water, and it's gorgeous, and all kinds of stuff. You see all kinds of fish and corals close to the windows. And then they stop at Soto Central, and they jump in the water, and they feed the fish under the boat. And it's an incredible experience. And I've got pictures here, but where I'm getting ahead of my pictures. But this is how we use those sites today, every day. But when it comes to a in-water dive experience, then, of course, the Balboa is a little less important than the other areas. But Eden Rock, the Cali, and the Soto's Reefs are still absolutely pertinent and precious to our dive tourism attraction.
With respect to the Balboa, people say something is in high demand, limited supply, the value should be increased. If access to the Balboa is restricted during the days, but is enjoyable at night and on Sundays, that should make it, for those who want premium attraction.
I would think that for those people lucky enough to get there, absolutely, because it's in perfectly calm water. Except for Nor'westers, it is the calmest body of water on our island, and it's shallow. So it's the perfect dive experience for newbies, for beginner divers, for people who haven't been diving for a year or so, to jump in and drop down 30 feet deep. It's a shallow bottom. You can't go deeper than 30 feet at the wreck of the Balboa. You just hit bottom. And so it's a very safe place to take people for their first dive on their vacation. And same with the other reefs.
Right.
Same with the other reefs, just like it.
Now, as we continue discussing, this whole issue with courting a plan, certainly not going to call you a photographer or an environmentalist, because I think you're all encompassing. But as you shared, your love for the country, your experience and expertise here, but also the objective nature which you present in this, maybe should cause us at the very least listen, pause, perhaps take a few thoughts and think about it, ask some questions, and make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And that decision, by the way, which we have not yet talked about, I don't know, that decision has to do with this cruise port petition for referendum. Yeah. So the people's initiated referendum to give us the vote. Let the people decide this issue. Let's find out where the majority opinion is on this topic.
All right. And that way, democracy would at least appear to be at work.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pause. We're going to take a break. We want to take your calls, 949-8037, or toll free at 1-800-534-8255. You can WhatsApp, 925-3261. We invite you to, go to our YouTube. Let's go to YouTube, look for Radio Cayman live stream. Focus on, Mr. Platt and his presentation. Don't look at me at all. But this way you get a chance to see, to the extent what we're sharing with you. Perhaps this is about one way that Radio Vision has some advantages. I'm not sure. But this is important. I know some of us have seen your presentation before. We also want to talk later on as well about the idea of reef fish. I know you're very passionate about it. You get us an informed perspective. So those who are listening, they get a chance to really benefit from your counsel. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
The Premier League is back. Every team, every game, every goal is on Flow. Sign up for the Flow Sports Pack today and get 8 dedicated channels to all the Premier League games in stunning HD. Call 1-800-534-7253 or visit discoverflow.ky for more info. The Premier League is back.
A trip to New York City is the experience of a lifetime. Starting this December, Cayman Airways will be offering daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman to New York City. That's right, Cayman Airways is going daily to New York City starting this December. Stroll through Central Park or take in the bright lights of Times Square, enjoy a Broadway show or visit museums, the Empire State Building, and so much more. Whether you're visiting for business or pleasure, you'll fall in love with New York City. And daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman aboard Cayman Airways starting this December. For details and to book, call Cayman Airways reservations at 949-2311. Contact a travel agent or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Cruise tourism is a vital part of Cayman's economy. It is the government's responsibility to create an environment where our people can have an opportunity to grow and prosper today, tomorrow, and into the future. It is a myth that Cayman does not need cruise tourism. It is a fact that cruise passengers spend $200 million per year buying services from small businesses, tour operators, attractions, restaurants, and retail shops. Those funds stay right here, supporting our economy and communities. Support the pairs. Support our tourism.
Did you know that recycling collection containers are located island-wide on Grand Cayman? The Department of Environmental Health program is an integral part of DEH's waste management responsibility in the Cayman Islands. Start your recycling program at home today. Put your type 1 and 2 plastics in appropriate DEH recycling containers at all Foster's supermarkets, Kirk Market, or Hurley's Grand Harbor. Please keep the Cayman Islands clean. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. For more information about recycling, go to www.deh.gov.ky.
CUC advises motorists that in an effort to alert approaching drivers of speed restrictions when entering an area of road where CUC vehicles and personnel are present, the company will be deploying rumble strips. These rumble strips are a series of raised transverse rubber strips laid across the road which changes the noise of vehicles' tires make on the surface and so warning drivers of speed restrictions. On approaching CUC's work zones, motorists will observe bright orange road signs signifying rumble strips ahead. Before entering these work zones, motorists will encounter the rumble strips that are encouraged to drive with extreme caution at slow speeds until they are well clear of the work zones. These rumble strips are essential to safeguarding against potential danger to CUC personnel. If you have any questions regarding the use of rumble strips, please contact our customer service team at 949-5200 or via email at service@cuc.ky.
Not all insurance is created equal, but who has the time to shop around? Take the guesswork out of your insurance coverage with Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Let us match you with the best coverage to suit your needs at a price to suit your wallet. Plus, get superior customer service from dedicated claims professionals to ensure speedy claims processing. Get your insurance through Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. And thank you for joining us. And it truly is an honor and a privilege to be able to have as our guest today, Mr. Courtney Platt. Many of us have seen your photography locally, or equally aware of your international appeal, whether it's shooting for National Geographic. But we cross you in the supermarkets, and hey, that's my neighbor, that's my friend. You're one of us, right?
Yes, man.
So that notion, the reason why I share that is that we need to start looking within to that person who shares an expertise and experience that we can relate to, and bring to bear on a topic as important as this. Courtney, from that perspective, you talk about this. You reference that we're making money as an economy from the dive sites that exist in the harbor. Yeah, maybe the different businesses and the like. The government is making money as well through the tourism dollar. You shared that the PwC report, as of 2015.
I'm not sure when they did it, but probably
yeah, somewhere about some time back.
Yeah.
Didn't account for that potential lost revenue or lost revenue as a result. So
yeah,
where are we now?
Totally ignored.
Oh. Take us through, man. Take us down the path. I got a couple of questions for you, but I'm going to be guided by you in a sense.
Okay. So, we have the snuba diving and snorkeling and scuba diving and sea trek and glass bottom boat tours and the crazy amphibious bus tours and snorkeling tours to the reefs out there. So those sites get well used every day. Some days, probably well over 1,000 people see those sites, when we're really busy. But probably on an average day, it's minimum hundreds of people visit those sites regularly, every day. And as I mentioned earlier, that has, in the EIA, it clearly indicates that we are making between $9 and $27 million per year on those tourism activities to those sites, specific sites that are going to be destroyed by this dredging.
We know that the Honourable Minister had a meeting just recently, a public meeting.
That's right, 26th.
Was it the 26th?
September.
Yeah, at a family centre. Was well attended. Many people watched it online as well as it was happening. A lot of discussion, and there was talk about, some things transpired there. We saw the video that was looking at as you mentioned, the rubble on the seaside edge of the dredge pit. But as you shared, the reefs that are in peril, there wasn't really much said about that.
I was absolutely shocked, stunned, that after 3 years opportunity for them to address the issues that we protested in 2015, that they didn't address any of those issues. And they pretended with, the conversation that that they had, but in fact, they hadn't. They said, oh, we're going to modify the plan, do less damage, less dredging, less damage. They barely adjusted the plan. In fact, they added a different section of dredging for additional cargo area. And I'm not against adding cargo. I'm not against having a pier. I'm against dredging destructively. And so they didn't talk about any of these issues that we were concerned about in 2015, that we brought up in 2015 and said, please don't dredge, don't kill these areas outside the dredge pit. And then at this meeting on the 26th, they're talking about the dredge pit. And not only that, they showed a video of the dead reef on the seaward side of the dredge pit, which is not even a point of contention. It has nothing to do with the argument about the damage that's going to be done. And they didn't talk about Eden Rocks, Wreck of the Cali, the Soto's Reefs. They showed this video instead. It was 3 to 5 minutes of this 75-foot up to 40-foot depth area that's been completely destroyed by cruise ship anchors and chains. An area, by the way, which I'm very familiar with from over 2,500 dives as pilot of the deep dive submarine here. I did that for a number of years as well. And so I know the reef, the harbor reefs, all the way from shore to 1,200 feet in the harbor. And that area that they showed then is this dead area that nobody's arguing about. And so it's kind of like that video was like we're having a conversation about 7 Mile Beach, and they show us a video of Georgetown streets and say, look, there's no sand. Right? Basically, they showed us this dead reef on the seaward side of the harbor and said, look, there's no living coral. Well, duh. We know that, those of us who understand this situation. But that's this thing about pulling the wool over our eyes. They're trying to pretend. What's that word? It's not deceit. Oh, that would be a good word. But this one is deception, where you hold up your left hand, but the action is going on in your right hand. Okay, they were being deceptive there, which just set my hair on fire, which is why I've been talking about this ever since the September 26th meeting. And I joined the members of the opposition, and I gave my presentation about what we're going to kill if we do this dredging because of that deception. It cannot stand. Those of us who actually know need to speak.
How many of us know? Because, information is key, and they say information is power. Many people that I've chatted with, when they are honest about it, they really don't know the Georgetown Harbor. They don't dive. It's been a long time that they've been out there. So tell us. Yeah,
I've done thousands of dives in Georgetown Harbor, drove hundreds and hundreds of glass bottom boat tours across those sites that I mentioned earlier. Now, if we're able to look at the video here, for those of you who are watching online, I can show a little bit of what we're talking about. This is an aerial shot of the harbor of the area we're talking about. And you see Eden Rock Devil's Grotto on the right side of the screen. In the center is the Wreck of the Balboa. On the left edge, just above the cruise ship, is Soto South. The dredge pit itself is going to be right from edge to edge between Soto South and Eden Rock. Let's take a look. Here's what it looks like with the overlay from the EIA transposed over that aerial photo. You see the dark red is the dredge pit. And this is kind of like when an atom bomb goes off. It's total, disintegration. That's total write-off. And I would have sat quietly if that was the only thing that was going to happen. But the yellow that you see in this photograph is the Soto's Reefs, right on the north edge of the dredge pit, immediately against the dredge pit, which means, and this is the part we haven't talked about yet, you see this red stuff in this image. This represents the silt generated by the dredging over about a 4-month period. And so it's kind of compressed 4 months into one image. So you can see where all the silt would go. And the EIA made it very clear we can anticipate a minimum of 100 meters of severe death outside the dredge pit. And that includes all of the Soto's Reef you see here in this yellow. And there's the Wreck of the Cali just on the inshore side, Again, I'll give you like 20 seconds here to catch up on the YouTube. So you see the wreck of the Cali on the inshore side, and what's really significant there is, and it's in the EIA, there's a study they did for over a year on the current flow in the harbor. They studied what the current was doing in different locations. In the area of the Cali and in Hogstye Bay on the inshore side of the dredge pit, it's zero current flow average. The average current flow is zero in those areas. That means the silt is going to hang, and then slowly settle down into a fine, sludgy material, completely different from what's there today. And it'll probably blanket those areas until a storm comes and stirs it up. But this is just the dredging part. We haven't even talked about operating phase, when they start pulling into shallow water with their thrusters and turning our harbor into a mucky thing every day. But here's where Eden Rock is on the south side of the dredge pit. And you can see the dredge pit actually cuts out a little bit of Eden Rock. And again, this massive amount of death would occur in that area. But as the marine biologist who did the EIA pointed out to us at that fateful meeting back in 2015 when the EIA was announced to the public, this is best case scenario. This is based on doing all the mitigations the best way you can and hoping that everything goes right, but it rarely does. And you usually get far worse case than the best case. And further, if you actually read the EIA, you'll realize that it's not so black and white and clear cut. There are lots of different species we're talking about. Each one has a different susceptibility to silt. And some species are far more susceptible than others. And this death could extend much farther along for especially sponges, which are filter-feeding animals. They clog up when the silt hits them, and they can't reverse their flow. So they just clog up and die. And that's going to be a really extensive amount of loss.
According from that perspective, as this dredging takes effect, the helicopter tour, the person flying in on Cayman Airways, or even the person from shore somewhere, when they look out at the harbour, what are they going to see? So the dredging's on the way. I see the graphic of it. But what are we going to see?
Let me ask our listeners, how does your heart sing? The way we sing the national anthem. When you look out and see that beautiful water as you're coming in for a landing, that gorgeous, beautiful, clear water, and you get excited, I'm home, but it won't look like that. It'll be milky. When the ships first pull in the morning, I've got a graphic here, an image. It's later in the show, but government. Here's another way government was being a bit deceptive. Anybody remember back in 2015 when they showed us an aerial view of what the harbor was going to look like with the dock, finished dock, and a couple of ships alongside the dock? The beautiful clear water around the ships, and that is really deceptive because it won't look like that. And so I made a graphic to show what it really would look like when the ships first pull in. It's going to be milky. Look at all the aerial photos of any other shallow water port anywhere in the Caribbean, and you can see that when these ships pull into 45 foot of water, their thrusters hit the bottom, and there's always silt down there, and that kicks up and it hangs in the water for a long time, especially in the first few years after they do the dredging, because all that super fine talcum powder material I talked about that doesn't exist there today. That stuff gets re-energized into the water column every time they pull in and out. And so first thing in the morning, solid milky across the harbor, slowly getting better offshore, but in those near-shore areas like Hogstye Bay and around the wreck of the Cali where there's zero current flow, that's going to hang and hang and hang all day. And you cannot expect that Eden Rock or the Soto's Reefs, and certainly the wreck of the Cali, will ever be useful again as a tourism attraction for snorkeling, scuba diving, sea treks, glass bottom boat tours, all the ways we use them today.
There are those who have expressed concern that this could materially and in a very negative way affect 7 Mile Beach. What are your thoughts? Just dredging in the harbor?
Bob Sutter had a theory that I kind of subscribe to, but I don't know enough about oceanology to be able to confirm. But it does confound me that the gentleman who did the study for the EIA concluded that the sand would not be affected on 7 Mile Beach. And that just is amazing to me because the shelf, the reef shelf, is a conveyor belt. And basically, the sand is constantly flowing like a slow river as storm waves push it along, and it'll get pushed from north to south during a nor'wester season, and from south to north, during the summertime, but the majority, I think, of movement is going from north to south. The biggest energy is the nor'westers pushing, and I think that you will see massive amounts of sand lost through this increased depth you create at the end of that conveyor belt. You're making it deeper to a little spill out over the edge of the drop-off. And so you can expect that as sand falls into the pit, it's going out the thing faster than it does today. And so, that might be a problem, but I've got bigger problems than that to talk about concerning our sand on 7 Mile Beach. We're not even having that conversation today because of this port. All right. When we start talking about reef fish, we will be talking about what we're doing to the sand on 7 Mile Beach.
And that is something we want to chat about. We're going to pause. We'll take a quick, short break. When we come back, please rejoin us. Stay tuned.
Brand Source Home Gallery has been appointed the exclusive Cayman supplier for Duravit bathroom products. Duravit is the leading international manufacturer of bathroom ceramics, tubs, and showers, recognized around the world for beautiful, functional products. Winner of top industry awards, Duravit collaborates with leading European designers to provide the most elegant and innovative bath products. If you're ready to bring style, comfort, and innovation to your bathroom, visit Brand Source Home Gallery to see the new Duravit showroom and meet the in-house bath designer. Whether you're planning a functional family bathroom or a personal spa retreat, browse the Duravit collection and be inspired. Brand Source Home Gallery, delivering a new standard in custom designed bathrooms. Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go.
Meet the world with Puritan Cleaners. Ask about our ongoing discounts on wearing apparel and household items. Put your pickup tickets in the box at any of our 4 stores for your chance to win in our Christmas drawing. 4 convenient locations to serve you: Savannah Countryside, Elgin Avenue, Georgetown, Centennial Towers, West Bay, Eastern Avenue, Georgetown. Drive through rain or shine. Free pickup and delivery. Call Puritan Cleaners at 949-7104. You feel good when you look good.
Welcome to our Esso service station. How can I help you today, ma'am?
$25 in fuel, please.
Sure. I bet I can make you smile, too.
Bet you can't.
Would $5,000 cash make you smile?
Of course. Who wouldn't? But how?
Spend $25 or more in fuel at any of our Esso service stations, and you could be the winner of $5,000 cash. Every week for 5 weeks, one lucky winner will win $5,000 cash. Made you smile, didn't I?
I'm smiling.
Drive into an Esso station today. The Esso brand is a trademark of ExxonMobil Corporation and is used under license.
You remember the sale at Vant Motors?
Yeah, the Your Sale, Your Choice. The one where you can get cash back or can put the savings to extend the warranty or upgrade features.
Yes, it's still going on. But now you can get $8,000 off a new Ford Ranger truck. $8,000, you know?
You for real?
Come see for yourself while they still have so much to choose from now through October. Save big during Your Sale, Your Choice at Vant Motors. With almost every vehicle on sale, you decide whether to get your dream ride at its lowest price. Take cash back. Add years to the warranty or service plan. Choose an add-on or mix your options. Your sale, your choice, because you know what you need, and Vant Motors will help you drive it home. Vant Motors on Walkers Road.
The Wesleyan Churches of the Cayman Island District is pleased to present their 6th annual Youth Convention, Navigate, from October 23rd through 28th.
This year's theme is focused on navigating your spiritual journey in a postmodern world, featuring pastors Alton Ebanks, John Gray High School counselor Christopher Murray, and visiting pastor Ronald Benjamin.
The rise of technology, identity politics, and societal changes can create roadblocks in a young person's life.
Remember, learn the skills to take charge of your spiritual journey.
We need to get back to the basics of life.
The 6th Annual Youth Convention by the resident churches of the Cayman Islands takes place in Northside at the Cradock Ebanks Civic Center, October 23rd through the 28th. Bus services will be available nightly from Georgetown to Northside. For more information, contact Cassandra at 925-1930 or Pastor King on 916-5372. That's 925-1930 or 916-5372.
Thousands of Caymanians work in our cruise tourism industry. It is a myth that Cayman does not need cruise tourism. It is a fact that 4,500 Caymanians work in this industry today as taxi and tour operators, boat captains and crew, restaurateurs, retailers, water sports operators, and ambassadors at our attractions. If our cruise tourism industry is half of what it is today, what are we going to do with our people, the thousands of unemployed Caymanians? Support the peers, support our tourism.
Do you know that conditions may change suddenly in an emergency and you may have to leave at a moment's notice? When a hurricane threatens, you should have a grab-and-go survival kit. This kit should include your personal identification and other vital documents, which should be sealed in a watertight pouch or container. For more tips and information, visit the Hazard Management Cayman Islands office or caymanprepared.ky. This hurricane tip is brought to you by Hazard Management Cayman Islands and Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. And thanks for joining us in the studio. Mr. Courtney Platt joins us as we talk about the environment, the port project, and the economic as well as the environmental concerns that he has. Right? As we go into the break, we were sharing and other things, and we recognize that many are looking at this from different angles and genuinely concerned, trying to understand what's best. In the meeting on the 26th at the Family Center with Honorable Minister, there was discussion about carrying capacity, something we've been hearing more and more about, and a very respected engineer, Mr. Tim Madam, spoke about it in relation to the turtle farm, but you have a take on that. You give us a perspective.
Yeah, I have to admit that I was disappointed. Tim's a good friend of mine. We're church mates, and I respect him and love him dearly. But he said he was going to talk about the issue of the carrying capacity of the island. And then he just really talked about the turtle farm. And that's understandable. That's where he works, and that's his focus. So it is true that we could use more bodies at the turtle farm. And that's about the only place that I think we need more bodies. That and Pedro's Castle, perhaps. But other than that, when it comes to the carrying capacity of the island, all you have to do is ask yourself, are you loving driving to work or driving home at the end of the day? Are you loving the traffic the way it is today? Are you loving going to the beach? Are you loving going to the sandbar? Because, these things have changed radically in the past couple of decades. And there seems to be no ceiling visible for CIG, the government's aspiration for growth of our population. Whether we're talking about resident population or stayover population, which I think those two things we have to really focus on, or the cruise industry. But, what they're talking about doing here is not simply saving the cruise industry and keeping the jobs we have today. They want to grow it. And they're talking about growing it at a rate of about 800,000 passengers, additional passengers, over the 1.5 million that we have right now per year. Now, do we really want to add another almost million passengers, cruise passengers, to our carrying capacity here, overloading our carrying capacity further on these areas like the roads, getting them someplace that they want to go, or the attractions? And I'm pretty sure most Caymanians would agree that the quality of life as a Caymanian has been dinged enough, and that we need to start setting a plan for what kind of tourism we really want to grow and how many people we can fit on this little rock. It's a small island. It's like a little room, and they're singing this, the roof. Raise the roof, raise the roof. I don't even know the song, but they want to raise the roof. But the room's not getting bigger, right? And they're just going to pack us deeper and higher.
That's a concern I've heard from some who are very much in favor of growth and progress. But they have expressed the concern that as it is right now, our roads, our schools, our healthcare systems, all these things,
septic, everything.
Yeah. So we don't have the ability yet, the infrastructure, to accommodate what we have now. So the effluent matter that may come, the discharge from other places, all that waste, we just don't have the means to accommodate what we have to bring more people. Their view is, before we go down that path, let's put in place the infrastructure.
Yeah. And a lot of this was in the EIA that nobody has read. And I have to kind of almost wonder if everybody in CIG has read. Have the legislators who are totally behind this project, have they really read all the negative stuff that came out in the EIA? Or are they just ignoring it? I don't know. But
people don't want to hear bad news. They don't.
No.
So you've read it.
And I hate to bring it.
Well, what are some of those negative things? I mean, we asked earlier, has the government downplayed the negative impacts? You've said convincingly, very much so. But what else are we talking about? Not just the damage to the reefs and the wrecks, the loss in revenue up to $27 million, I think you shared. But what else are we talking about?
Well, you haven't talked about the jobs that would be lost on the waterfront and all those glass-bottom boat drivers and all the different ways that those tour operators are running. So it's not just the money that they're earning for their companies; it's those employees too. And so you're trading off one set of employees for another set of employees, right? Saying, "Oh, we're going to lose these jobs if we don't do this thing." Well, in fact, if we had some members of the opposition here with me right now, they would be telling you that actually statistics contradict that argument. That the numbers actually contradict this argument, that the cruise is going to drop away, that the jobs are going to be lost, that side of the economy is going to be diminished. As far as they can see, looking at all the years from the time, 2013, when this started to be vocal, and they started to say, oh, we're going to lose 1% every year from here on, and we've been gaining. So that the numbers are actually very contradictory to the claim.
All right. When we come back from a news break, could we ask you, about the cruise berth plan? Your suggestion as to what we should do. If not this, then what? Can we ask you about that?
Sure, glad.
All right. Talking to Courtney Platt, if you want to watch us, we're on YouTube. We just go in and you stream live. This is one of the times I would say to you yes, because Courtney has some graphics that we can share. Maybe much easier. You can look at it. But remember, you're watching a radio show. You're not listening or watching television. It's a difference. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Follow Radio Cayman on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman. Headline.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. Headline. These are the biggest stories right now.
Shortly after 7:30 p.m. on Sunday, officers responded to a report of a two-vehicle collision on the Linford-Pearson Highway at the King's Roundabout. It involved a Honda Accord and a Nissan Pathfinder. No injuries were reported. Following the collision, the occupants of the Honda Accord left the scene in another vehicle described as a blue, late-model Honda Civic. Police are appealing for anyone who may have seen this collision or have any information on the whereabouts of the vehicle that left the scene to contact the Georgetown Police Station on 949-4222. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. There has been an outpouring of anger in the U.S. from politicians, celebrities and human rights groups over a report alleging the U.S. policy on gender recognition could be changed. A report in the New York Times on Sunday said a government memo proposed officially defining gender as biological and fixed. The change would rescind previous policy which eased trans recognition. Instead, it would define gender solely on the genitalia people are born with. One of the world's biggest tobacco firms, Philip Morris, has been accused of staggering hypocrisy over its new ad campaign that urges smokers to quit. The Marlboro maker said the move was an important next step in its aim to ultimately stop selling cigarettes. But Cancer Research UK said the firm was just trying to promote its smoking alternatives, such as heated tobacco. And India is still reeling after 58 people, including children, were killed after an express train ploughed into a crowd of festival goers last Friday. The crowd had gathered on railway tracks near the city of Amritsar in northern Punjab state and had no warning the train was headed their way. Few heard the train because of the sound of fireworks being set off at the time. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And in the studio, Mr. Courtney Platt is our guest. And as we're having this conversation, hopefully as you know, those online listening and watching, and hopefully getting a chance to share, to weigh in, to be informed, to perhaps make up their minds, perhaps to be cemented in what they were thinking initially. So I appreciate you sharing. There is, as we're talking, a call by the citizens for a referendum on this issue. There's a petition going about saying sign. Can I just ask of you, just to make sure? Some have shared that if they sign the petition, that means that they're for or they're against. What does signing the petition calling for a referendum mean?
Well, I'll be honest. In my personal opinion, that clearly, if you are absolutely certain in your heart of hearts that you do not want a referendum, that you clearly want to build this port the way they've planned it, then no, don't sign this. That would be silly, right? But if you want to find out what the population, the voting population, thinks about this issue, if you want to find out what the majority would like to see done, then if you're on the fence or undecided, or you've decided you really don't want this thing built the way that it is, please sign the referendum. The petition for referendum. Now, mind you, this is just a petition for referendum. If we achieve the numbers we need, then this will force the government to give us, the people, a vote on this crucial issue that will affect all Caymanians far into the future, because this thing's permanent. When you kill the reef, and I'm not talking about just the dredge pit here. We're talking about, for those who are just tuning in, far beyond the dredge pit will be killed by the silt generated from dredging. That means Eden Rock to the Soto's reefs and everything in between. And the harbor will never be clear water again. And this is an assertion from the EIA. It is not an assertion from Courtney Platt. This is what the EIA tells us to expect, which is why I was dumbfounded when, right after the EIA was first presented to the public in 2015, as soon as the marine biologists finished disclosing how disastrous this was going to be to the harbor reefs, that our Minister for Tourism stood up and said, therefore, we're going forward with it. I couldn't believe it. And everybody else who understands what this means to the harbor that was at that meeting and saw those graphics and heard the marine biologists explain how this is going to kill it, we were just stunned. And we immediately activated. And you saw that I did a petition online, change.org, and we had over 5,000 signatures there. And there was another petition, an international petition that was done, bringing over 100,000 signatures from international sources. And, of course, we had the big protest, and you saw the, over 500 people or so down there protesting by the dock. And I thought that when the minister then came back and said, okay, we'll modify the plan, we'll do something to mitigate and make this better. I thought 3 years later that on September 26th, when they revealed the new plan, that we were going to see something radically different that had a lot less dredging involved and would somehow save those reef sites outside the pit. And it, again, set my hair on fire, along with everybody else who understands this thing clearly, that they had not, after 3 years, addressed those issues. And I asked the minister very pointedly, what about the mitigation that will be used to contain the silt and save the reef outside the pit? How are you going to do that? And he said, well, I don't know. We're leaving that up to the contractors that win the bid. Wow! For those listening, I just slapped my forehead. That is dumbfounding. After 3 years, no research done on how you could possibly increase mitigation in a way that's never been done before, because that's what we're asking for. We're asking for a new technology nobody's ever achieved on any other dredging project close to a coral reef anywhere in the Caribbean, and probably anywhere in the world, where you could actually literally save the reef right outside the dredge pit. And I think if you really worked hard on the engineering of that, there actually could be a solution. You probably could dredge in a way that wouldn't kill the reef outside the pit, but it takes a lot of planning and engineering, and it'll cost money. You have to rig up suction hoses that would suck water from inside the containment area, and have to have a much more efficient kind of screen. The screen they use right now is literally a screen. It lets the fine particles go right through. And that's the stuff that kills the reef. It blocks off the sunlight from the corals, and they die for loss of light.
You referenced earlier some of the online petitions, up to 100,000 people. Now, those are just people internationally. But we've seen that, Jean-Michel Cousteau sort of weighed in on this as well.
Yeah.
I think the name, carries some credibility, some weight internationally.
Absolutely. And what you may not even be aware of is that an even bigger name than Jean-Michel Cousteau, son of Jacques Cousteau, an even bigger name than that, Dr. Sylvia Earle, named Georgetown Harbor a hope spot in her Mission Blue statements. And what this means is this is a marine protected area that they are hoping will be preserved forever and restored to its former glory eventually. If we restore our reef fish population, it could be fantastic, and it would be an awesome attraction for diving. But it's a hope spot, a Mission Blue hope spot with Dr. Sylvia Earle. And it's in the middle of our marine park. And our conservation law stipulates that the government shall do no harm to the environment in its major projects. And right after we pass that law, they say, okay, and we're going to kill this big chunk of reef in the harbor. Boy, I could just go on and on. Sorry. I'll give you a breathing room here.
No, man. I'm listening because, those who were joining us earlier, you could see the obviously emotion in you, the passion. I think it comes from, as you said, your expertise, but also your personal experience here and diving and working in a different facets, whether it's diving the deep sub, whether it's the glass bottom boat, or whether it was just doing the dives. We've heard a lot of discussion about the EIAs, the need to conduct this environmental impact assessment. Is that necessary going forward? I mean, we've had one.
A new EIA, absolutely, because they've changed the plan, and they've added a section of dredging nearer to shore, closer to Eden Rock, that is of major concern to the Department of Environment. But yes, and I think it's one good reason why I think that we should be asking for a referendum, because there's more information yet to come. And as the members of the opposition have been pointing out, there have been a number of relatively new discoveries made regarding what has been hidden from us behind the veil, so to speak, regarding negative aspects of this project that government doesn't bring up. Obviously, they're not bringing up anything negative about this project. Nothing. We have to find that stuff out for ourselves, but the EIA will be pointing that out. We need time to be able to respond to that.
All right. We're speaking to Courtney Platt. We do have a caller online.
Oh, good.
I think this headset might be for you. Let's go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Good afternoon, my friend. How are you today?
Okay, and good afternoon to your guest, Mr. Platt.
Good afternoon.
Well, I've been listening, and you're speaking a lot about the destruction of reefs and dive sites, which is not good, I don't think. But the more serious situation concerning this subject is the destruction of the buildings in Georgetown because of the sea surge that will come in ashore. The insurance companies, the people that own those buildings in Georgetown, I hope they see this before they go and encourage the government to build this dock. Because there's going to be some serious destruction in Georgetown after this dock is built. I don't know when, but it will happen. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Caller, I definitely agree that is a matter of concern, that we already have nor'westers washing over the road in Georgetown Harbor and Hogstye Bay. But if we do this dredging, it's pretty obvious to anybody who understands hydrodynamics that it exposes the area a little more northerly on the north side of the Port Authority to the same kind of washing that we're currently getting in Hogstye Bay. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Platt, we do have another caller online. Good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling, Mom.
This is Daphne Orrit.
Maybe it's Daphne.
And right off the top, I'd like to say that until this point in time, I have not been, making too many calls or saying too much about the proposed birthing facility in Georgetown. I am not one of those who has been against the project, nor have I signed any petition. I am not an expert. What I can tell you offhand is that from the time I was much younger, I was aware that my grandfather, who was a sea captain all of his life, and many of the other sea captains from the West Bay area, knew that Georgetown Harbor was the best location for docking their ships. And they chose that because its location was such that usually it was only during heavy northwesters that they, needed to perhaps move to another location. Having said that, I want to once again reiterate, I am not an expert in dredging nor on marine life, but I have studied over the years, particularly over, I would say, the last 2 to 3 decades, the subject of choosing a site for the birthing facilities or the dock in Grand Cayman. We need to have a greater. We need to expand our facilities. We need to do so. The question is, where do we do so? Do we choose to do it in a location that has been used for years and which until now, has proven to be the better site. Granted that over these years of huge cruise ships and other ships docking just outside of Georgetown, or marine life, or seabed, or reefs have been compromised. I don't know whether we'll ever get them back to what they were. I'm almost certain it won't happen in the next 500 to 1,000 years, perhaps. None of us will be around at that time. However, what I will say is this. Do we now leave a site which has already been compromised, where the constant dropping of anchors has damaged the area, and now move to a more another location, which up until this point is like virgin property, which has not yet been compromised, which may not be a better location, which does not offer any real solution to the problem of getting new docking facilities. We need to understand that in making progress as we move forward, there will need to be some compromises made. We just need to look at the pros and cons and decide which is the better of the 2 or 3 or more options that we might have. At this point in time, the government has chosen to get experts on the subject of dredging. I am not. But I have to trust the people that I voted for to make the best decision. Now, having said that, it is no less costly to do it at another location. There is no site around Grand Cayman that one could choose that you will not have to do dredging to provide for the type of berthing facility that is needed. We need to have a conversation. The public needs to understand, yes, there will be sediment. There will be as a result of dredging. However, is it going to be more than what it would of necessity have to be if we chose another location, which to this point has not been compromised by all the dropping of anchors into the area? The government at this point in time has been open. They have had meetings, and what for anyone to say that the government is covering up something, I am not sure if that is exactly correct. When you keep moving forward and you try to get the best advice you can from the individuals who are going, or the entities who are going to be doing the dredging, who are going to be building the dock, you have to rely on the experts. I cannot, as a Caymanian citizen, rely solely on somebody who does diving or who does, boating. We have to listen to them. But in a project of this magnitude, you have to listen to the experts whose job it is to build berthing facilities.
Yes, well.
We have 2 main pillars of our economy here. One is tourism, the other is finance. I could say a lot more on the subject, but may I, at this point, thank you for your time. And in other words, we've heard individuals speak of the terrible negative impact that's going to be made because of the sediment from the dredging. The new plans have minimized the amount of dredging which would have been done from the original plan that they had. The other thing is The government did not say there would not be sediment. What needs to be understood is that it is not something which is going to cause, as far as the experts have advised, it will not be something that is going to be a continuous problem after a certain length of time has passed.
But with
what
that
I
time,
do know is this, that we need the facility. Where do we locate it? Tourism is our second pillar of the economy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. Mr. Blatt.
Yeah, Miss Daphne, I love you dearly. You know that. And I really agree with 99.9% of what you've just said, especially the location. Absolutely. But you lost me at we can trust these guys, and you also lost me at the experts say that there won't be destruction outside the pit. That is not what the experts said. The government, I think, has managed to hoodwink you a little bit there, because the experts that the government hired to do the EIA did their job very well. They are true experts in marine biology, and they understand silt because they worked on a number of projects, including Falmouth. And we know that Falmouth was a huge disaster, not because of the marine biologists, but because the politicians pushed forward despite what the marine biologists warned them about. And that's one of those cases where it went really badly, a lot worse than best case scenario. But as far as location is concerned, that's never been my issue.
Right. You want to keep that on because we have a couple of other callers. Let's go to our phones. Good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. This is Darlene Clinton. How are you?
Very well. And yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm not sure who your guest is today. Is it?
It's Courtney Platt.
Courtney Platt. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I when he used the word dumbfounded, I think that's the right word, because I think more than him is dumbfounded. I'm just in awe of our legislators and the way that, first of all, they don't really know anything, so they can't answer any questions. And as far as the silt is concerned, nobody knows how the silt will go on and on. Falmouth is still overcome with silt. And we all know that people that know the area, that know the movement of the sand from 7 Mile Beach and everything else have called in. I heard Mr. Cam Jackson on the phone. And if anybody knows it, it's Cam. And, I mean, they just won't listen to any of the local people that know what they're talking about. Now, it's not only going to be the anchors, the part that's already compromised from the anchors that's going to be damaged. It's going to go all the way out to Eden Rock and everything around Georgetown. And yes, our forefathers chose Georgetown for the harbor, but they didn't dredge it. They didn't have to dredge it for what they wanted to use it for. I don't know that we need a dock. I don't think that anybody can really, they should close their eyes and imagine what Georgetown is going to be like with 3 or 4 or 5 big cruise ships docked out in there, tied up to the dock. You won't be able to see a drop of ocean. It would be like the buildings have been extended over Hogside Bay. It is terrible. It is terrible. And I am very, very disappointed and angry, and I'm totally against it. I think we should enhance the on-land facilities for the tourists, where they don't have to stand in rain and sun, and that they can move a little quickly when they don't have to be standing in long lines. There's things that can be done to make their experience more, much better. And I don't really think that they mind the tenders. Personally, I don't think that. I don't believe that. But the government is not giving us any answers. They cannot give us any assurances because there are none. And we need not only a referendum, but we need to march on it again. And I will march as far as I can.
All right, thank you. And if you haven't signed the referendum, please petition.
I have signed it.
Excellent.
I have signed it.
And
definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Feel free to help us out.
Thank you very much.
And thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you too. According to that, we've got to believe we'll find a short break. See how fast time flies when you're having fun.
Man.
All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Residents are being advised of road closure and road works in the vicinity of Breezy Way, Redgate Road, and Airport Road from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday, October 22nd. The roadwork will be entirely on Breezy Way, and the access to Breezy Way from Redgate Road will be closed. Limited access to Breezy Way will be given only from the entry point of Owen Roberts Drive, commonly referred to as Airport Road. From 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Breezy Way Road will be closed, as will the access point from Redgate Road. Residents are being asked to access Breezy Way from Owen Roberts Drive today, Monday, October 22nd. Motorists are asked to proceed with caution and obey all traffic signs.
We're building resilience one pipeline at a time. For the past 35 years, the Water Authority has been working to build a reliable piped water distribution network to better serve you in both fair and stormy weather. Visit our website or follow us on social media for useful hurricane preparedness tips and important updates in the case of an extreme weather event. This hurricane preparedness tip is brought to you by Water Authority Cayman, suppliers of the world's most popular drink.
Congratulations, it's a boy.
During the greatest events of your life, whether or not you have the right health insurance coverage should be the last thing on your mind. That's why at Fidelity Health, we are committed to helping you get matched with the right plan to suit you and your family. We offer a range of plans to suit your budget, plus access to a network of quality care throughout the Caribbean and the USA. You can relax and enjoy life's greatest moments when you are covered with Fidelity Health. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote.
The Department of Children and Family Services would like to invite the community to a series of inspiring events recognizing the contributions of our senior citizens throughout October, the Older Persons Month. This year's theme is Respecting the Wisdom and Value of Older Persons. Key events include educational seminars, a beach walk, a variety show, gala, movie trip, and more across all 3 islands. For a full listing of events, get your copy of the Older Persons Month calendar at public buildings, dcfs@gov.ky, or contact DCFS at 949-0290.
Cayman's cruise industry must be preserved and developed. It is a myth that the cruise lines will continue to call on Cayman at the rate they do now without the piers. It is a fact that the mega-class ships will not be tendered. Arrivals will decline by half over time as the older ships are decommissioned. This will hurt our economy and thousands of Caymanians who work in this industry. If we want to continue providing opportunities for Caymanians, we need the piers. Support the piers. Support our tourism.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. And in the studio, Mr. Courtney Platt is our guest. And if, it's a value, I think it is, if your schedule allows, whether individually or with others, we come back on, we have a discussion in particular about the reef fish and its importance. I know you had a TED talk, but maybe as we close the discussion, ask you to repeat some of the things in case the callers join us late or other reasons, why you feel the way you do and the impact that this could have on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if we try to wrap this up into what my big complaint is, it's not about the pier. There's actually a potential design for a pier that could do this and bring us 2 ships at a time instead of 4 without any dredging and without mucking up the harbor. That could be done. It can be done. There's a great plan for how to do that. If you'll accept just 2 mega ships instead of 4. If that sounds like enough, there is a great plan that can give us that without killing the reef. And that's what the point of my controversy over this thing is that it isn't about the pier. It's not about the cruise industry. It's about killing the reef. And the EIA that was presented in 2015 very clearly showed us, for those who were present and saw the graphics and heard the marine biologist, that at least 100 meters outside the dredge pit is sure to die from the silt if we dredge. That's unacceptable. Sorry, 100 meters either direction, north and south, 100 meters north, 100 meters south. It's a spread coming out of the pit of the silt. And we can anticipate that's like a minimum loss is 100 meters. That means Eden Rock, Soto's Reefs, and the wreck of the Cali. And it also indicated that we can anticipate, as the ships pull into the harbor every day, that they're going to stir up the bottom every day, and that's going to hang. And there was another study shown in the EIA. If you just read the EIA, folks, it's shown in the EIA about the currents in the harbor, and it demonstrated that the near-shore areas, Hogstye Bay and the Cali, have zero current flow. And so that silt is going to hang there all day long. This is daily. And this is this dusting from the ships coming and going is like a death maintenance silt, that once you've killed the reef, every day you hit it again with a little bit of silt, and it keeps it dead. And what happens once the corals die is they're quickly overgrown by algae that cover up any new surface that could be colonized by a new coral larva. But it can't, because the algae grows there much faster. And so you end up with a dead reef that's covered by algae. And this is permanent, folks. This is not something that will just clear up over a few years. It will never go away. This will be permanent. We'll have a milky harbor, and the reef will be dead, and this is a $9 to $27 million a year tourism attraction that we're going to be losing, and it's not been accounted for in the PwC report.
Not accounted for.
Yeah. So that's kind of the nutshell on my argument about why we need to pause and reconsider this plan. It's not about a cruise berth. This is about this plan for the cruise berth that requires all this dredging.
So from that perspective, two final things before we get to reef fish. As the listeners are there, if you were going to ask them to do something, you could read the EIA. What else are you asking of the listeners? What do you want them to do?
Sure. Well, obviously, please sign the petition for referendum regarding this port. As far as this port plan goes, we need to reconsider the plan. That's number one. If you're a registered voter, please sign the petition, and then let's have a vote on this issue. In the meantime, we'll have more time to look harder at the issue, at the pros and cons on both sides of this issue. The government would like us not to know about all these things that we're talking about now. They have been mute on this, or even denying some of these facts, and there are facts from the EIA. But all of this argument is really a distraction from the bigger picture that we need to be dealing with right now. This is desperation time for our reef fish population. Our reef fish population has been decimated and then decimated again, and there are certain species we are about to lose permanently locally here in Cayman. Especially the groupers and the big snappers we like to eat, they're almost gone. But our parrotfish population is very important to the health of the reef and to the health of 7 Mile Beach. And the parrotfish are a key issue that we are now dipping into. So we have to address our reef fish population. We need to expand our marine parks. We need to look at other possible things that can be done to minimize our take from the reef, because we're taking too much. It's unsustainable. It has been for a long time, for decades. This has been unsustainable. We've got to address that issue. And this is taking our eye off that ball. It's taken up my time for the past 3 years talking about this issue instead of talking about the reef fish. So if you have a chance, please, Google Courtney Platt TEDx, and you'll have an 18-minute summary of the reef fish debacle and what some of the possibilities are that we could be doing right now to help solve that issue. And that's the big issue, that this port is just one piece of the puzzle of.
Well, Gordon, as we go forward, maybe you and others with a collective discussion otherwise, as we have a chance.
I would love to be here talking about the reef fish.
There you go.
Love to be talking about that. And I know there's a lot of Caymanians, especially old-timers, who understand that as well as I do, and they will agree, and they'll be nodding their head when they hear me talk about it. All right. And they'll be also agreeing with many of my ideas on what we could do to solve it.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time this afternoon, and people will get a chance to see your TEDx talk, but also maybe, as you shared, sign the referendum, the petition for the referendum, in order to have a say in this very important decision.
Yeah.
All right, Courtney, enjoy your week. Be filled with sunshine and cheer, my friend.
Thank you so much, Sterling. I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Igualmente, señor. All right, to our listeners, it is Monday, and that means we got an opportunity to make it right. Trust and pray that you have a safe, productive week. Come back tomorrow for more talk today right after the midday news and midday meditation. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Mark your calendars. Radio Cayman's Breeze Fusion Walk Run is coming. Sister Islanders, save the date. Saturday, November 24th. Breeze FM and Radio Cayman will be returning to the BRAC for the third